Okay, hey everybody. Wanted to just kind of check in and see how everybody's doing. First thing we're going to do, we're going to start doing a series of these videos to give you guys some good content, some good information coming out, kind of for the community, for anybody you want to share it with, any of that kind of stuff. First up today is a buddy of mine that I met about a year and a half, 2 years ago, Nick Clark with Gnar Runners, and Nick is the man when it comes to trail running in Colorado, and they put on a ton of great events around here. Nick and I got to know each other, excuse me, about a year and a half-ish ago, I guess at this point, Nick, maybe 2 years ago. We both had this harebrained idea to do a road race from Fort Collins down to Loveland. And we were kind of having two separate independent conversations about that, but with the same person, Ryan Birch. And so Ryan, after he and I were talking, said, man, you need to connect with Nick and talk about this Longview idea. So as all good things happen, we met up for a beer or two, or can't remember how many, but had a beer. Yeah, yeah, I think it was two. Had a good conversation. Decided between Nick and Sarah and I, said let's kind of go for it and put this Longview marathon together, and started that conversation and launched the Longview last year. And so Nick is the man when it comes to our training plans. And we're going to talk about that here in a little bit too. But first, I want to just kind of let Nick talk a little bit about Gnar Runners, and kind of if you'll just kind of give us the history of that and how you got started in the racing business, and how Gnar came to exist.
Yeah, so gosh, we set up Gnar now about 9 years ago. Started out with Pete Stevenson, who I co-owned the company with for 8 years, and now partner with Brad Bishop as of just over a year ago. In fact, just after we had that initial conversation about the Longview Marathon down in Loveland. But we started out with the Quad Rock 50. Pete and I were out for a run out on the Horsetooth Lorry trails here locally in Fort Collins, and decided that Fort Collins needed an ultra marathon. Back in those days, there were very few 50 milers on the Front Range, or really in Colorado at all. There may have been at that point, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 50 milers, and really nothing on the Front Range.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So Quad Rock was one of the first offerings for a 50 miler on the Front Range. Today, there are many more trail runners and many more races available to folks in Colorado. But we put it on the schedule, so a 25-mile race and a 50-mile race between Horsetooth Mountain Park and Lowry State Park, just west of Fort Collins here in town. Since then, we've added a series of races. So we have the Black Squirrel Trail Half Marathon, which you ran last year, Shane.
I did.
Dominated that race, as I recall.
Yeah, I held up third from last, strong.
Hey, you got it done. You finished the race. I think Black Squirrel was the second race that Black Squirrel was the second race that we created and put on. And then we have the Never Summer 100K, which will be 5th year this summer. Let's hope.
Yeah.
Then we also own the Blue Sky Trail Marathon, which is actually in its 12th year this year. But that one grew out of the Fort Collins Trail Runners. It was initially operated as a nonprofit. And, 4 or 5 years ago, we took that over as part of the Gnar Trail Series.
Right on. And so, and you guys currently have a kind of a virtual version of the Horsetooth Half that you manage. Is that you guys?
Yeah. So yeah, that's right. We manage the Horsetooth Half for the Fort Collins Running Club, which owns the race. Yeah. So this year's virtual race is the 47th running of the Horsetooth.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I didn't
realize. So it's actually it's a year older. Wait, 2 years older than I am. Well, I'm going to be close.
Just dated yourself.
It's 1 year, 1 month older than I am. The Horsetooth Half Marathon. We've been managing that for 5 years. It's an awesome race. It runs from the west side of town along the reservoir there over Bingham Hill, and finishes with a big old party in downtown Fort Collins, right outside New Belgium. So that's been a lot of fun to put on. And, obviously with the COVID-19 situation right now, we were kind of right in the crosshairs.
Right, seriously.
That one. So unfortunately, we had to cancel that a couple of weeks ago, and now our runners are out there doing the virtual version. They have another 10 days to get it done.
That's awesome. Well, and I see a lot of people kind of mutual connections through Facebook and social media. Everybody's kind of posting their times and their stuff. So they're staying in it, which is cool.
Yeah.
And to you guys, just to kind of put a time step on it, it is what, April the 10th. And so we're square in the middle of, like Nick said, we're square in the middle of this quarantine, stay 6 feet away if you're out on a trail and don't go anywhere kind of situation, a unique thing that none of us have experienced up until now. So we're trying to navigate through it. And that was cool. And that's one thing I wanted to kind of talk about too, the virtual thing that you guys are doing with the Horsetooth Half. I think that's I've been obviously in our circle and in our industry right now. That's kind of a thing that's becoming more and more popular within over the last 2 weeks. Sarah and I are in the middle of getting ready to launch one next week. For anybody that wants to participate in it as well. So maybe talk through the decision process, because we all struggle with, what do we do with these races? Maybe kind of talk us through your thought process when you guys with the club, and how you guys came to the decision to go ahead and just kind of have to cancel it for this year and move to a virtual event.
Yeah. So gosh, going back, 3 weeks now?
Seems like 6 months.
Seems like 6 months. I know. Time is moving very slowly.
Yeah.
It was kind of the middle of March when this whole situation really started blowing up in the US. And, we started realizing how serious the situation was and what the implications were for folks like us who are, in the business of bringing people together in large numbers.
Yeah.
It was increasingly obvious to us that was not viable. And the Horsetooth Half Day, April 19th, was literally going to be right in the crosshairs of this thing and how much blowing up locally.
Yeah.
And as it's, so we're a week out now, pretty much a little more, 9 days from what would have been the race date. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of looking like that's going to be the peak of this whole business locally.
Yeah.
Like I say, it was pretty obvious to us that it just wasn't viable. So we made the tough decision to cancel the race. We did look at options for postponing to later in the year, but it's tough. It's a tough call to make. You look at the calendar, and obviously there are a ton of events already on the fall calendar. We have a ton of events that we have to put on in the fall, and a bunch of races postponing to the fall. So just kind of, it's going to be a super compact fall racing calendar, assuming the fall racing calendar gets the green light to happen.
Right.
So we really didn't want to squat on the calendar, and decided just to make it a virtual event for those who wanted to complete their training and get it done. So we offered the 20-day window to finish out the run and report results. We have a virtual results page on the Horsetooth Half website. And then we'll send out finisher medals and t-shirts and bibs if people want them.
Nice.
To celebrate that finish. And we'll try again next year.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, and that's the thing for people to know, right? Like obviously the racing environment and being out there with them, because what do you typically have? A couple thousand people that participate in that?
Yeah, we had 1,700 finishers last year. We were on track for a bigger finisher number this year. Yeah, it would have been probably a record field this year, which kind of adds to the bummer factor.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the thing, right? Like how people are kind of embracing this virtual thing and the satisfaction of completing the race, whether it's obviously more fun to complete it on the day when it's, with everybody else there around you, but just to be able to kind of, do it anyway and still have that satisfaction of knocking it out and getting that medal. It's cool that you're still doing the medals and all of the finisher rewards and that all important t-shirt.
That all important t-shirt. That's right. Yeah. A big part of what we do with the Horsetooth Half is, we have this big training program leading up to it. So we have this community of 400 or 500 runners who are all training, as a community, as a group, weekend long runs. So just to kind of not be able to offer anything would have been, awful. So we have a big community of folks who are seeing that training through to the end, and
that's awesome.
Getting their runs done.
That's cool.
It's not ideal, but it's the reality of our situation now.
Well, it is. And I think, I've had, obviously like all of us, we've had tons of conversations around this whole coronavirus thing. And I think people are really okay with what's with the virtual races. I mean, I had a friend of mine that just did a virtual Spartan race.
Mm-hmm.
The other day. I don't know how he did it, but he he put up like, and it was a thing. Like Spartan's offering some of their races virtually, so it's like, if I think people are accepting that, this time around, just because I mean, what else are you gonna do?
Right. I think there was a bit of pushback
Sure.
on some races, some of the races which were early to cancel, or early in the cycle when it wasn't necessarily clear to everybody.
Yeah.
The implications of the current health crisis, but now everything's cancelled.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you going to do? You're either just not going to do it, or you're going to do it virtually and accept that that's the reality for now. I mean, people have been super gracious about it, and people are having fun with connecting online and showing people pictures from their runs and celebrating that. And it's been good to see.
Yeah, for sure. So let me shift a little bit here. Never Summer. This was an epic day for me personally, and I was not racing; I was pacing my brother. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was about 4 years ago now at Never Summer, and my brother, who's going to be on one of these in a couple of weeks with me, he held records when he was a kid. He's like you; he's a fast guy. There's two. There's you guys that are up front that are racing to win and that kind of thing. Then there's those of us that are just survivors and just hoping to get to the finish line at some point in time and then within the cutoff. And so a few years ago, Chris was running the Never Summer. I think it was 4 years ago, this summer. And the words ring in my ear to this day that I will never forget. I was pacing him. I picked him up with about 15 to go. I forget what aid station that is, about 16 miles out, something like that.
Canadian, probably.
Yes, it was Canadian. Yeah. Because they go and they do kind of an out and back and then come back
Right.
through. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that aid station picked him up there. And he was running a good clip. He was actually a little bit hurt, was having an ankle problem. So I pick him up at Canadian. We take off a couple of miles in. He's like, this is the part that will forever stay with me. He goes, "Hey, idiot, slow down." I look around. He has never in our lives, he's about 4 years younger than me, never in our lives have I heard those words come from him. So I appreciate the difficulty of Never Summer, because that enabled me to run in front of my brother that I've never been able to do. So
You're welcome, Shane.
So tell me, because that's I love that race. I love how you guys organize it. The course is just in one of the most beautiful places in the country, as far as I'm concerned. Probably one of the most rugged courses I've ever seen. I think that one takes, I mean, you've done obviously a lot more of those kinds of things than I have, but kind of tell me a little bit about Never Summer and how that got rolling.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a real jewel. We're super fortunate to be able to put a race on up there and work with permitting agencies who've kind of let us create this incredible course. So it's up at Cameron Pass, just west of Cameron Pass. It takes place almost entirely, or in fact entirely, within the boundaries of State Forest State Park. 64 miles. It hits two peaks, one in the Never Summer, 7 Utes early in the race, one on the south end of the Medicine Bow Range, North Diamond. It hits 4 alpine lakes along the entirety of the course, and the variety ranges from, I think we have about a quarter mile of tarmac, and then the rest is a mix of jeep roads, nice single track, off-trail alpine running, some super steep ascents, some bushwhacking there on the Yurt Trail. If you're lucky, you might get a hailstorm up high, up around Clear Lake or Kelly Lake.
Yeah.
Last 2 years, we've had big hailstorms.
Last year, you had all kinds of weather rolling through.
Yeah, we had like a 3-hour window there. It's like, whoa, this is getting serious. Yeah, we had some big storms roll through last year, which made things interesting, kept folks on their toes.
Yeah.
But everybody got through it, so that was awesome. Yeah. And it's just a stunning location, and it's a part of Colorado that not too many people are familiar with. So every year we get folks local Coloradoans who come up. They've heard about the race. They come up and run it, and they finish the race. And then, we do a breakfast with the awards on Sunday morning. The race starts Saturday morning and finishes at 5 and finishes Sunday morning at 5. So 24-hour cutoff. Mm-hmm. And then we do an awards breakfast Sunday morning. And every year, folks come up to me and, from Colorado and said, Nick, I had no idea this was up here. It is so stunning. So yeah, we're fortunate, man. It's like Colorado's best kept secret.
Yeah. Do you have this is kind of for me, but do you have a cap on that? Like how many people you can allow in that race? Like,
we do. It's gradually been increasing year by year, but 350 is where we're at for this year. We'll see what happens moving forward. We're tinkering with the idea of adding a 50K race to the weekend, but we're still kind of figuring out the logistics of how that might look with the park.
Yeah, I was actually about to ask you that if there was a conversation of for us a little bit more mere mortals, if there's an idea of a shorter distance.
Yeah, so it would be. I mean, we've been talking about it for a few years now, adding the 50K distance, which would basically be all the highlights from the southern part of the course.
Nice.
So you'd hit North Diamond and then basically bomb back down the hill and then join the course at the penultimate aid station, Bachman aid station.
Okay.
Pop over Gould Mountain into the finish. So it would be somewhere around 34 to 35 miles. And probably, I don't know, it would have to be one of the most stunning 50Ks in the country.
For sure.
But, we have some logistics to figure out in order to be able to make that happen. Part of that is some connector pieces on the route. And also, we're tight on parking space. So
yeah.
we host out of Gould. We work with the community association there. We host from the Gould Community Center.
Yeah.
So we're looking at maybe ways we can extend their parking area this summer. But yeah, we're working on it.
I would selfishly, I would appreciate that. And I will say, like, I've told you before, that's one of those races that the 100K has been on my radar. I just have to decide if I'm man enough to do it.
Just got to put in those training hours, Shane. You got to commit. And
that's the kicker.
Yeah.
I love race day. I hate training.
So always the way around. Well, I love race day too, but
yeah. I do like going just for, training run up in the hills with the friends and things like that. But so, and we're going to get to the training piece here in a minute, but I want to kind of give our folks that don't know you as well a glimpse into Nick Clark, the man, the myth, the legend. There was and I've heard this before, but you had this harebrained idea in 2011, and I want to hear this thought process. I want to hear how the days went and all that. But you ran Western States in 2011, 4th place finish, if I remember.
2011, third
place finish. Okay.
Short-changed me, Shane.
Sorry, my bad.
Podium, yeah.
3rd place finish, yeah.
Yeah.
Then 2 weeks later, you turned around and ran Hard Rock.
Yeah.
What the hell's wrong with you?
Good question. God, what was I thinking? I think the way that worked out was, so I had an automatic entry into Western States.
Okay.
Because I had finished in the top 10 the year before. So folks who are not familiar with Western States, they have 360 or so spots. That's the cap. And they have, I don't know how many people it is now that apply through the lottery to get into the race, but it's 7,000 or 8,000, I think. So, the spots are at a premium, but they have this thing, right? If you finish in the top 10 men, top 10 women, you get an automatic entry into the following year's race. So I was 4th the year before, so I'm like, oh, wow, this is, I can't give this up, so I'll just run with it for as long as I can finish in the top 10.
Yeah.
But then the other race, Hard Rock, similar to Western States, they got 160 spots and a similar number of people looking to get in. So I had to put my name into the lottery, and maybe it was the second year that I put my name in the lottery, and I got lucky. And it's just like one of those things. It's like, well, you get the spot,
you got to
take it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, well, we'll just roll with it. And yeah, so Western States, let's see. It was on the Saturday. Hard Rock starts on a Friday. So yeah, it was 13 days. essentially 12 days between the two. And the last, I think, 15, maybe 20 miles of hard rock was some of the most intense suffering that I've ever endured in my racing career. It was royally painful, but very rewarding to get to the finish line on that one.
Oh yeah, I mean that's such a legendary event.
Yeah,
what was the finish? Where did you finish at Hard Rock?
So I was third at Hard Rock.
So back to back top 3 finishes at arguably 2 of the most prestigious 100-milers on the planet.
Yeah, third and third. And yeah, I was coming into KT, which is about the 85-mile aid station at Hard Rock in the direction we were going that year. Yeah. I had been chasing this guy, Dakota Jones, for hours through the night, right? Gradually closing the gap, and I finally coming into that aid station. He was leaving just as I was coming in, and it's like, oh my God, man. So he's in second, I'm in third. First place was after the races, Julien Charrier. We weren't catching him, but it was this race, 85 miles deep, 12 days after having finished Western States, where, I've been racing hard as well. And oh man, there's this huge climb out of KT, and I was just in this world of hurt. But I was, had the adrenaline pumping because I had this shot at getting into second. But Dakota was a little too strong that day, and it wasn't. Once the adrenaline, once I knew that I wasn't going to get him, and the adrenaline wasn't there any longer, and it was just me and my fatigued, pitiful state. I mean, it was just misery. And I don't know, those 10, 15 miles probably took, who knows, 4 or 5 hours, something ridiculous.
Golly.
But we got it done. It was a beautiful course, fun day, and great experience.
Yeah. Well, and had Dakota run Western a couple of weeks prior, you probably would have had his number.
Probably. I let him know that after the race. I think he agreed.
Dang, that's crazy, man. Yeah, I had seen that and heard that story. I hadn't heard you tell that, but I just, knowing a little bit about that world, I was curious to hear that. So that is nuts. All right, we're getting into it here. Give me real quick, kind of your most favorite personal story running, like whether it's a race, whether it's just you and the boys out in the hills. What's when you're sitting around having a beer with the guys, what's the story that comes up? Like this was there's been a lot of great experiences over the years running. A lot of it, race in my early years, kind of doing ultras. It was very much race focused, training super hard to perform at races. So I'll always remember the Western States finishes. 2010 was the first year I ran it. Okay. And I qualified at Bandera, your brother's race. Although Chris didn't own it back then. Right. Still Joe.
But yeah, Joe Prasadis. I believe that was the first year that Bandera was a qualifier for Western States.
Okay.
Anyway, so I finished. I won Bandera, so that got me the ticket into Western States in 2010.
And that's a rugged. I mean that course is no joke either.
Bandera?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, it doesn't have any massive climbs or anything like that you see out here in Colorado or on the Western States course, but a lot of short, bumpy hills and a lot of cactus.
A lot of cactus.
You're just getting sliced to pieces by this pottle, I think they call it.
In the middle of the trail as close as you can get.
That's right. But the trail is super rugged, tons of rocks everywhere, and you're constantly rolling your ankles. And it's a burly, rugged course, and a lot tougher than you might guess from just looking at the elevation profile.
Yeah, if you look at the elevation profile, it's like, oh, that's no big deal.
Yeah.
Go run Bandera.
It's a great race. I ran it twice. Love that race. But anyway, so I qualified for Western States 2010. My second ever 100-miler. There were some big names that year. That was the year they made the Unbreakable movie. Right. So I'm just there, hoping to sneak into the top 10 and have a good run. And, secretly thinking that maybe I could get in the top 5. And, I'm 97 miles deep into this race, right? There's 4 guys. It's Jeff Rose, it's Anton Krupicka, it's Hal Kerner, and it's Kilian Jornet. These are the big 4 names in the race. And running down to the river on Cal Street, they call it, mile 64 to 78. I go past Hal Kerner halfway through that section of the race, slide into fourth. I'm like, whoa, this is cool, man.
Now we're there.
I think this is like the biggest race on the US trail running calendar. Here I am, like second 100-miler ever. Nobody knows who the hell I am, and I'm running in fourth, and just gone past Hal Kerner. And then mile 97. So fast forward, whatever that is, 20 miles. Go over No Hands Bridge, an iconic section of the Western States course, right at the bottom of the final climb up into town for the finish of Western States. I'm with my pacer, Justin Mark, and he's like, that's Kilian Jornet right ahead of you. So we cross this little creek, and it's me and Kilian shoulder to shoulder.
Battling.
Yeah, racing for third. He'd blown up earlier in the race, but, as soon as I go by him, he's back in race mode, and it's like an 800-foot climb into town, and we are like pegging it up this hill, running hard. Typically, you're destroyed, you're walking up the hill, but we're like shoulder to shoulder, racing hard into town. It's me and Kilian. I'm like, this is insane. Here I am, Nick Clark, nobody, racing against the best mountain runner, perhaps
Planet.
ever.
Yeah.
And it's a moment I'll never forget. We crested the hill, the final hill in Auburn, for the descent into town towards the track where we finish. And Kilian just puts on those jets after we've been back and forth for 2 miles, shoulder to shoulder. Yeah. He puts on the jets and just goes, and I'm like, wow, that's impressive. It's like, as much as I wanted to have a sprint on the track, I couldn't hold on to him. But I had my son, my 4-year-old son there waiting for me, and my wife and my family at the track, and I got to finish with him a minute behind Kilian. That's a memory I'll never forget. A racing memory.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
And you made it. Speaking of Unbreakable, like there's a couple of little cameos in there.
Yeah, a couple. You gotta know where to look and when to look. But it's cool because they captured my finish with Alistair. I watched it the other day. They just released it on YouTube for free, I think, and we watched it as a family. So it was cool to see little 4-year-old Alistair. He's a competitive kid, and even at the age of 4. So I ran the last 100 meters with him, and last few steps he made sure to get ahead of me and beat me across the line. Still to this day, we're out for a training run. He's half a step ahead of me always.
Yeah, just that much. That's all. Yeah. Yeah, that kid is quick, man. I mean, we were filming with you guys at the starting the Horsetooth Half thing. He was.
Yeah, that's right.
Kid was motoring.
Yeah. Yeah, he had a good run at your 4th of July race too.
He darn sure did.
Yeah, last summer. Yeah.
Summer. Yep. Yeah. I can't remember his time, but he was hooking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what do you run? I think he was low 18s maybe.
He was low 18s. Something like, that sounds kind of right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. It was funny because we watched that movie when they released it on YouTube, and I was like, that was Nick.
Wait a minute.
So let's with kind of our time remaining here, let's dive into kind of the training. So we're both rocking our Longview hats today. Nicely done there, sir.
Yes.
So let's kind of talk through. Give me your thoughts on kind of people that are thinking about possibly running their first half or full marathon. Mm-hmm. Where do I start training? Where does my mind need to be? What do I need to kind of have in my head that if I'm going to tackle this thing? And we're going to have a conversation with a few people. Damian Knight, if you remember him, another part of Fort Collins crew. I'm going to talk to him in a couple of weeks, and he's going to kind of take us through his process from from start to finish too. But give me your thoughts. Where is kind of the lead trainer in our group here? Where does somebody need to be kind of mentally, and what do they need to be doing to get ready if they're thinking about doing this half or full for the first time?
Yeah, so we're pretty much about a half a year out from Longview right now. And so, I mean, if people are thinking about taking on the marathon, really now, if you really want to put in a full training cycle, now is about the time when you're starting to think about laying a foundation for your summer training.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you are thinking about that marathon, then so we're looking at base mileage. We're looking at just getting out there, getting into a regular schedule of training, whatever that might look like for you as a runner. So, you know, if you're used to running 4 to 5 days a week, then you're getting out there and really just running at an easy foundational pace. So you're building that aerobic base, you're putting your skeletal system through the works. Now would be a great time to start working on some strength foundational work. So, you know, working with a PT, perhaps now, you know, we have telehealth opportunities to work with PTs. And put in some of that core and strength and mobility work. And I would say that probably an 8 to 10 week period of just getting aerobic, that is easy paced running in, gradually building that mileage up so that you're ready for the real work of the training program, which will start in about 2 months from now.
Yeah, cool. And you guys know too, we've got Nick's built a training plan that we're going to start putting out on our website, longviewmarathon.com. You'll be able to see that. What would you tell somebody that's, again, I'm kind of looking at, you know, kind of first time marathoners or half marathoners. What would you tell them from a mindset standpoint? What kind of words of wisdom? You know, you talked about kind of being in that depths of the pain at mile 90 or 85, you know. What would you tell somebody when they're out on a training run and they're kind of hitting that wall, you know, at mile 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever, that they're just now getting started, you know, training for a marathon? It's like, gosh, in their mind, like, I know I want to do this, but what do I do? What's, you know, that mind, I guess I keep saying the word mindset, but tell me what your thoughts around that are.
Well, you know, the thought process is, I mean, number one, set the goal. Okay. So, you know, whatever the goal is, commit to it. Have that there for you so that you know that you're working towards something. You know, I thinking way back when I first started running, you know, I was training for the Detroit Marathon. It's probably 25 years ago. And, you know, I used to be a rugby player growing up in England, and I didn't do anything for like 8 years after I quit playing rugby. I was kind of living in New York, partying hard and, you know, putting on the pounds. And I'm like, you know, I got to do something about this. I committed to the Detroit Marathon. You know, my wife's from the Detroit area. And so I'm like, you know what, I'm going to run a marathon. And I remember my first ever like run. I ran down to the East River. I lived in Astoria, Queens. It's like a half a mile downhill to the river, right? I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm running downhill. I feel fantastic. I turned around, I came, you know, I had to run back home. It's a half a mile up the hill. Like, you know, halfway into that hill, I was like, oh man, I was like walking and feeling sorry for myself. And I'm in my running clothes, and I'm walking, and I'm like holding my head in shame. And it's like, you know what? I'm going to complete this run. And you know, I had that goal in my head. You know, I am going to finish this marathon, so I need to do this, and I need to build on this. And in 2 days' time, I'm going to go out and I'm going to do another 1 mile run. And I completed that, and then, you know, 3 weeks later, I'm up to like a 3 mile run. And by this point, you know, I'm actually running every step of that run, and I'm starting to feel like a runner. Okay, and so that positivity is coming into my head. It's like, yeah, actually, maybe I can do this. But I was constantly focused on the goal. I was recording my runs. I was seeing what I had done. I kind of looked ahead with for myself what was to come. And really, it was just about taking small goals every day, getting that run done, and keeping my eye on that longer term goal.
That's awesome. I think what you just said is absolutely huge. It's getting past that, you know, and that's honestly, like for me, like I said, for us mere mortals, it's cool to hear that story. I actually didn't know that about you, that you weren't a runner your whole life. I knew you played rugby, but I didn't know you weren't a long distance guy. So, when I know Nick Clark, it's, we're seeing he's this world-class 100-mile guy. It's interesting for me because I mean, that's what I struggle with. I go and do a long run or run a race, and then I hang up the shoes and I don't touch them for a while. It's like, done with that. And when you go back and like thinking about running Never Summer right now, like that makes my head want to explode. But like
small steps, man. One small step after another takes there.
Yeah.
I started with a 1 mile run that I could barely complete at the beginning of my running career. And then at the end of it, I mean, I don't really race much anymore, but I still love to get out and run, obviously. But, at the end of the running career, there I am doing 400 or 500 miles in the course of a summer.
Yeah. 2 within 13 days.
I would never, ever have imagined that on that first run that I did.
Yeah.
But it's just, taking each day as it comes and building those steps and working towards your goal.
That's awesome. No, I love that. Well, and I would kind of add to what you said too, is plug into a community, for with whether it's through the Longview or whatever, Fort Collins Running Club down here in Loveland with Sweetheart City Runners, whatever, find a group of people. And I'll tell you too, I think now it's going to be interesting to see what happens through this whole time with running as a sport, because you can't go to a gym right now. So people can't work out. I mean, running, in my opinion, and one of the reasons we got into it is because it's a simple sport. Grab a pair of shoes, go out the front door. Pair of shorts, go out the front door.
Yep.
Definitely want the shorts. That's important. Otherwise, it gets real weird. But I think that's the thing. I think it's going to be interesting to see kind of through this whole, coronavirus environment that we're all kind of in the middle of. You hit the nail on the head earlier. You said we're right in the crosshairs of it, especially in Colorado. We're kind of on the top side of it. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens to the sport over the next year or so.
Yeah, it will be interesting. I mean, obviously, when you look at the broader trends 3 years from now, 2020 is going to be, if you're looking at participation rates in races, it's going to be in the toilet. There's no races to run.
Right.
And 2021, we'll see what that looks like. But I do think like you say, people are looking for ways to stay active, to stay fit, and running is one great option that's available to everyone. It's easy. It's essentially free. So it'll be interesting to see what that looks like in 2 years' time, once we're kind of through this whole process, hopefully in 18 months, like the experts are telling us that we'll be through this. What that looks like in terms of participation rates in the broader running industry.
For sure.
So but now is a really great time. Get out and lay those base miles down, man. Just get out there and run 4 to 5 times a week. And then by the time hopefully summer rolls around and we can get back into some more of those kind of group dynamics where we have that support of our peers that we're training with, you'll have a great base, and you'll be ready to, if you are perhaps a bit more of an experienced half marathoner or marathoner, to put in some workouts and maybe work on performance for the marathon.
Can you kind of lay out real quick for us, and we'll wrap it up here, kind of when for the Longview specifically, when are we ramping up our training plan? I think you said, and I've got it here, we'll look at it later, but
so I think really we're looking at, like I say, those base aerobic miles through the end of May, and then starting to work on a bit more quality stuff, talking specifically about the marathon, beginning in June. And then hopefully we'll be into some group training and long runs, weekend long runs, starting late June. Is that what we were talking about or early July?
That sounds right. Yeah, late June, early July sounds right.
July, August, September.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll see how it plays out with the coronavirus situation, but we'll definitely be, as soon as we can, in that summer period, June, July, be working on the group training runs, long runs.
Yeah, those were a lot of fun last year too. I think everybody
Well,
it was cool too. And I'll say that from kind of from our perspective, from the race director side, it was really neat to see people that when we first met them, it was like, I've never done this before. And then we get to high five them and give them a big hug at the finish line.
yeah, that's cool.
When it was done, that was really special. That was really
for me, that, you know, personally speaking, you know, that's the best part of the race director job. You know, for all our races, we try and offer some group training runs, whether it be a structured thing like through Longview Marathon or the Horsetooth Half Marathon, where we have a structured training program that goes throughout the training season, or, you know, a couple of group runs for some of our trail runs. But yeah, I mean, seeing people progress, making the improvements, those small baby steps on the way to the end goal, and then being able to high five when that end goal is accomplished. That's what being a race director is all about. I love it.
Yep. Yeah, that every time gets me every time. It gets me a little teary eyed when you see somebody, you know, coming through that, you know, how hard they've been working for the last, you know, 6 months or whatever, and they come through and do it. That's like you said, that's why we do what we do. So cool, man. Well, for you guys that are kind of watching, make sure you're following us on Facebook, Longview Marathon, and on our website too, longviewmarathon.com. All of the stuff, all of the updates will be kind of through there. The training plan will be posted there, and all of the things that we're going to be doing. Nick, thanks for the time, man. It's been fun.
I got plenty of time on my hands, Shane.
Yeah, maybe we'll just do this every day.
Got my races to put on.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, brother.
All right, dude. See ya.
All right.